The other day I was having a conversation with a guy who wouldn't stop talking about his step-brother-in-law, and I found I couldn't pay any attention to what he was saying because my mind was trying so hard to remember what a step-brother-in-law even is. Thanks to modern communication technology, it's never been easier to stay in touch with even the most distant relatives. But this presents a fresh new dilemma. What do you call everybody? Let's try to sort it out. Basically, relatives come in 7 flavors. Plain, in-law, half, great, grand, numbered, or removed. I'll use a family we're all pretty familiar with for my examples. If Homer's father has a son with a woman who is not Homer's mother, then that son will be Homer's half-brother, voiced by Danny DeVito. If that half-brother in turn eventually marries a woman, that woman will be Homer's half-sister-in-law, since an in-law is a relative whom you're only related to through marriage. Any children from that marriage in turn would be Homer's half-nieces or half-nephews. By the way, did you know that some people are trying to popularize the word nibbling as the collective noun for nephews and nieces? I always thought a nibbling was the bit at the end of the shoelace. Now Marge's mother is a widow, but let's say she remarries Ned Flanders. Ned Flanders would then become Marge's stepfather, and Flanders' sister, who exists and was mentioned in season 3,
and off to my sister's apartment in Capital City,
would become Marge's step-aunt. And any children that her mother inherited through her remarriage would be her stepbrothers, but if those stepbrothers got married, the spouses would be Marge's stepsisters-in-law, or perhaps more likely stepbrothers-in-law. A grand relative is anyone who is just a generation older. So just as Homer's father is Bart and Lisa's grandfather, Homer's uncle would be Bart and Lisa's granduncle, or grunkle. And just as Homer's grandfather would be their great-grandfather, Homer's grandfather's brother would be their great-granduncle. A senior relative is supposed to be called grand before they're called great, but I know in a lot of families they skip straight to the great title. I assume because most relatives would rather be called by the title traditionally reserved for Macedonian kings rather than Denny's breakfast specials. Things get pretty confusing when we get to cousins. Any children of Marge's sisters would be Bart and Lisa's cousins, and any children of Homer's half-brother would be Bart and Lisa's half-cousins. If Grandpa had a brother and that brother had a kid, that kid would of course be Homer's cousin. And if that kid had a kid, he would probably be around the same age as Bart and Lisa, so we'd call him Bart and Lisa's second cousin. A second cousin is someone who has the same great-grandparents as you, which you can remember because great-grandparents have a second title. A third cousin is someone who has the same great-great-grandparents, so Bart and Lisa's third cousin would be the kid of the kid of the kid of the kid of their great-grandfather's sibling. Now, our parents' and grandparents' cousins are our first cousins too, but we use this additional title of removed to signify the generation gap between us. Homer's cousin is Bart's cousin once removed, while Grandpa's cousin is Bart's cousin twice removed. But people can also be multiple types of cousins simultaneously. So for instance, we describe Bart's relationship to Homer's second cousin as being Bart's second cousin once removed. I realize this is a lot to take in, so let's go over some discussion questions to review. Question 1. In episode 1F21, Homer's father begins dating Marge's mother, which at one point causes Homer to freak out that this will make Homer and Marge brother and sister, and that their children will be hideous freaks with pale skin and 5 fingers. But of course, Homer was all wrong, since as we discussed earlier, under a situation like this, Homer and Marge would only become step-siblings by marriage. Do you agree that by over-explaining this joke, I've made it less funny? Question 2. According to the family tree contained in this 1991 book, The Simpsons Uncensored Family Album, Mr. Burns and Grandpa have the same great-great-grand-aunt, which makes them 4th cousins. Should this be considered canonical, considering that this same family tree asserts that Marge's mother's name is Ingrid Gurney, when as we all know from that same grandpa marrying episode, her name is actually
Jacqueline Bouvier.
Question 3. In season 16, Marge's sister Selma travels to China and adopts a Chinese baby named Ling. Do you think the show is going a little off the rails at this point? Be sure to state your answer surrounded by a bunch of aging millennials growing increasingly insecure about their growing pop culture illiteracy. I don't care what anybody says, I liked the Lady Gaga episode.